Hello everyone and welcome to this audio podcast in the series the SZ Loci Equinox. This is an RPSG KDAS collaborative as part of a Storm Robotics production. This is part of the Ballistix edition, and this is an audio podcast with myself, the Shientist, where I'll be providing an overview around vascular endothelial growth factor or VEGF. So wherever in literature, wherever evidence exists in anywhere surrounding VEGF, normally the underpinning or the basis is around an evidence surrounding cardiac ischemia. So cardiac ischemia is a condition in which the blood flow is restricted or reduced in any part of the body or human physiology. Cardiac ischemia is sort of a name given for decreased blood flow and oxygen to the cardiac muscle, or wherein in relating to for example red cells specifically that surround the cardiac muscle, or the around the cardiac in around cardiology, for example. Then specialists and health professionals can refer and do refer to the red cells specifically around the heart muscle, or around the cardiac system, cardiac physiology, as cardiomyocytes. Myocardial ischemia is also responsible for conditions such as, for example, angina, unstable angina, and shortness of breath, secondary to ischemic left ventricular dysfunction, and also cardiac other forms of cardiac arrhythmias. So vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF, plays a main role in inducing angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is sort of a multifunctional process of sort of new vessel formation by sort of gemmation or gammation, or by sort of a link of existing blood vessels, where there is a sort of a joining, or a stenosis, if you like, of existing blood vessels with new ones. VEGF also has a sort of a basis around organs such as around the heart or the cardiac muscle, lungs, renal, adrenal glands, liver, spleen, and stomach. Expression of VEGF or VEGF protein is under has been under sort of investigation in context of pathology-based conditions. VEGF-A is produced by endothelial cells, smooth muscle vessels, macrophages, cardiac fibroblasts, lymphocytes, megakaryocytes, monocytes, and platelets. VEGF is also a pro-inflammatory cytokine, and it inhibits the sort of formation of dendritic cells and promotes the expression of monocytes, macrophages, leukocyte migration, stimulates adhesive cell adhesion molecules, or CAMs, and also the activity of CD34. And it's also where expression of VEGF-A depends on sort of hypoxia, where there's low oxygen saturation, angiotensin, the angiotensin aldosterone mechanism, endotoxins, amongst other physiological parameters as well. In context of VEGF-A and myocardial ischemia, VEGF-A is a promoter of collaterals formation in the in and around ischemic myocardium, and VEGF-A has a sort of a positive effect on revascularization through several mechanisms, including selective mitogenic effect on endothelial cells, stimulation of vascular endothelial cells, expression and proliferation and regeneration, and vascular permeability increase, vasodilation by activating nitrous oxide synthase, and also prostacyclin, where there's inhibition, and apoptosis and matrix protease products. VEGF also has sort of an antithrombotic properties due to activation of serine proteases, urokinase, plasminogen activator, and the thrombolytic enzyme and thrombolytic enzyme generation. Excuse me. VEGF-A is a promoter, has a sort of promotory effect on around the myocardium and sort of the myocardium development, which promotes adequate blood circulation, oxygen saturation, cardiomyocyte loss prevention, sort of cardiac muscle remodeling improvement, and positive cardioprotective effect. The negative component of VEGF is its sort of pro-atherogenic properties, which are implemented through the protein participation in the inflammatory infiltration, where there is evidence of, for example, of cardiac ischemia, and sort of destabilization around sort of the sort of endothelial cells and tissues in and around the myocardium. The VEGF expression promotes the process of monocytes migration with subsequent transformation into macrophages and the formation of foam cells in and around the cardiac tissues. VEGF also stimulates sort of a matrix metalloproteinase expression, which can cause and does cause the sort of extracellular matrix dissolution and the endothelium endothelial migration as part of sort of VEGF human physiology, if you like. And so, in and around sort of the VEGF investigations, excuse me, there's been observed correlations between the level of VEGF-A growth and the degree of damage to blood vessels. VEGF-A level in recipients with critical sort of sclerosis in literature has been evidenced as significantly higher than in recipients with normal coronary angiogram and non-critical stenoses. VEGF-A has also been observed higher in recipients with total occlusion versus recipients with partial stenotic injury. Investigations have examined a sort of a relationship in recipients with proven sclerosis between the level of VEGF-A in sort of blood plasma and occlusion amongst traditional risk factors. There has been evidence excuse me, there has been evidence to indicate a positive correlation between VEGF-A and age, and negative correlation with VEGF-A and anemia, or wherein hemoglobin is affected. And also there is evidence to indicate, at least in sort of literature, to indicate that increased levels of VEGF-A in recipients in recipients with where there's evidence of ischemia. In surrounding VEGF-A and platelets, so platelets generally are an important parameter, surrounding VEGF-A, and the cytokine level growth in acute myocardial infarction can be explained by an increase in the number of platelets and sort of the aggregation, which leads to secretion of growth factors from alpha granules. In recipients with myocardial suppression, higher levels of VEGF-A gene expression and cortisol level reduction have been detected, indicating an increase in immune-mediated activity, and also where platelets have a sort of an evidence role in and around where there's evidence of myocardial sort of abnormalities. In and around sort of VEGF and angiogenesis. So angiogenesis and the coronary collaterals formation in, for example, acute myocardial infarction is important as an adaptation process in response to myocardial hypoxia or low where there's low oxygen. Increase in collateral circulation limits myocardial ischemia and prevents the spread of necrosis and improves the function of the myocardium. The ability of VEGF-A to promote the development of collateral circulation has been demonstrated in investigations surrounding animal models in context of laboratory investigations. And the use of VEGF for therapeutic angiogenesis in acute myocardial infarction has also been performed by intracardiac administration of VEGF encoding genes. So as a result, VEGF had been observed, for example, to increase in a number of functioning capillaries, activation of capillary collateral circulation, improvement of vasculature, improvement of microvascular regeneration, fibrosis reduction, and increase in myocardium contractility. And VEGF-A is also characterized where VEGF-A has a cardioprotective effects, including angiogenesis and endothelial cells proliferation. In and around sort of cardiomyocytes and producers of VEGF-A. Cardiomyocytes are generally targets for sort of VEGF-A, which perform several functions through myocardium. VEGF-A is perhaps the main regulator of vascular permeability and of angiogenesis. Induced myocardic angiogenesis enhances vascular permeability and endothelial cell proliferation. The production of VEGF-A from cardiomyocytes blocks the transformation of cardiac endothelial cells in mesenchymal, which plays an important role in sort of cardiac formation, sort of more generally. Factors involved in the upregulation of VEGF-A expression in sort of mice models have identified inclusion of hypoxia inducible factor 1 TGF or tissue growth factor beta and endothelin 1. Investigations surrounding VEGF expression release in humans are still ongoing. VEGF-A and cardiomyocytes. VEGF-A inhibits cardiomyocytes apoptosis and activates the expression of genes involved in myocardial contractility and metabolism. VEGF-A involvement in around the myocardium repair encourages sort of cardiac stem cell migration through a particular pathway known as P13K AKT pathway. VEGF-A and myocardiostrommal cell derived factor SDF1 encourages cardiac stem cell mobilization and myocardial repair within an infarcted myocardium. VEGF-A also plays a sort of a pivotal role in triggering cardiac angiogenic response following acute infarcted myocardium, and VEGF-A and VEGFR expression is increased or has been known to increase at sort of the border zone in and around investigations where rat models have been used in the investigations around myocardial infarction, where in rats on the first day of part of these investigations surrounding cardiomyocytes, the border zones around the and around the myocardium and around where the functions around cardiomyocytes in rat models on the first day, there has been sort of expression around VEGF-A and VEGF-R, and so in summary, angiogenesis is a process responsible for a great variety of physiological and pathological mechanisms. VEGF-A remains a sort of a main regulator of angiogenesis. Cardiomyocytes are responsible for sort of a production and release of VEGF-A and expression and express its receptors. A lack of VEGF-A expression in cardiomyocytes affects myocardial angiogenesis, resulting in conditions that impair cardiac function. VEGF-A plays sort of an important role in morphogenesis, contractility, and wound healing surrounding the myocardium, and high concentration of VEGF-A are associated with poor prognoses and disease severity where ischemia is a provocation. I want to say thank you to colleagues, collaborators who were involved in sort of co-developing this overview, and colleagues were between an academic institution and also two organizations, the RPSG being one and KDAS being the other. So once again, this has been an audio podcast, surrounding VEGF, or vascular endothelial growth factor. This has been an RPSG and KDAS collaborative along with a Storm Ballistix production. It's been an audio podcast in the SZ Loci Equinox, and thank you for taking the time to join in on this one. Thank you.